A young man is angry, saying that he cannot believe that the owner of the apartment changed the lock just because he could not pay the rent this month. He comments that the owner does not know that by doing this he will literally turn him into a homeless man and will have to sleep on the street. The boy adds that the payment for the novel he has just released will take a long time to arrive. He is the protagonist of this story, whose name is Biu. With his hands in his pockets, he sees that he has little money left to live and wonders how he will survive just with that. He looks up and sees a lottery, saying that it is already at the bottom of the well, so he is going to try his luck. Opening the door of the lottery, the protagonist says that he wants a scratch. The merchant, smoking something, asks him what he wants. The young man replies that he does not care, since he is only there to try his luck. But Biu sees something strange and even rubs his eyes to make sure he is seeing well. He thinks he seems to see the probability of success in each of the scratches and wonders if he is hallucinating from working so hard. The merchant gives him a scratch that shows a 100% probability of success. He tries to touch it, but his finger crosses it, wondering if he is the only one who sees this or if it is some kind of illusion. He decides to try one, and when he scratches, he wins 10. His eyes shine and asks for 2 more. When scratching, he wins 5 and then 50. He wonders if the number on the scratch is the probability of success. The owner of the store begins to doubt and prepares a row of scratches with 9 of 100% and 1 of 0%. Biu scratches the first one with 0% and wins nothing. He concludes that he is really seeing the probability of success. The merchant advises our boy to have self-control, but he asks for 20 bills for 10 yuan. The owner of the store asks him if he is going to buy all that, reminding him that he is wasting his last yuan. 10 minutes later, the old man has already transferred 20,000 yuan to the protagonist's account. Biu begins to question the numbers that represent the probability of success and the unknown value that he can win. He would like to understand how much he is going to win, for example, with the probability of winning 100 yuan or another amount. The merchant tries to convince him to stop, but Biu is determined to continue. However, when receiving the merchant's chips, Biu is surprised to see that the probabilities are disordered. He realizes that the probabilities are based on his questions and concludes that reformulating them can earn much more money. Our boy tells the merchant that today he is lucky, but the merchant believes that his luck will run out. The protagonist continues to scratch chips and does not win anything. The merchant, seeing this, sighs in relief and says that Biu's luck is over, advising him to stop. But he was looking at the chip with a 30,000% probability, revealing that he was buying 0% chips to disguise his plan. The merchant offers him 100 yuan to leave, but he insists on continuing, stating that now he will change the game, winning several of 10 yuan. The merchant says that no one has won more than 1,000 in that store, but the protagonist suddenly wins 1,500 yuan on a chip. The merchant realizes that all the winning chips have been taken by our boy, so he asks him to keep buying. Seeing that all the chips have a 0% probability, he rejects the old man's offer, explaining that he needs to be diligent and careful with his money. Biu leaves the store satisfied, wondering if he could use the system beyond the lotteries. He tests the probability of opening a door and realizes that he can see the probabilities and the chance of opening is gradually decreasing. When suddenly a dog comes in and breaks the door, he moves away for a while, confirming that his ability is real. The merchant is surprised and asks Biu if he knew that the dog was going to enter. He invents that he is a witness of a family of Cardamante with a line of 3,000 years. The merchant, still suspicious, asks Biu to guess something about his financial future. He is about to sell an apartment but does not know for how much. Biu uses his power to determine that the merchant can sell his apartment for 4.3 million. The merchant is impressed, grateful and convinced of Biu's skills. The protagonist stated that the other part would accept without a doubt, but if he tried to sell for 4.5 million, there was still an 80% chance of getting it. The old man showed confusion and seemed to doubt. Biu suggested that, if he had doubts, he should call the client. Sometime later, the merchant said that he really agreed, and that Biu was really incredible, and that he would give him 300,000 as compensation. He received the money and mentioned that he felt even ashamed to receive so much money with that guess. The merchant replied that he should not worry and that he should go in peace, because he had helped him a lot. Leaving the store, the boy stated that with his talent he would now conquer the best possible life. On the street, the dog did not seem to be well after the accident. The boy, seeing him, said that the dog was stupid because he was lost and thrown there, but he seemed to be a breed dog. He wondered what the probability was that that dog had an owner, and the system concluded that it was 100%. The dog helped him earn money, so he decided to help find his owner. During a game, the ball that the dog had in his mouth flew into the advertising fence, which returned hitting both heads. The protagonist said that the dog was very stupid and wondered how the owner could stand that. The dog pulled him by the foot and he thought that the fool seemed to want to take him to his owner. The dog suddenly ran like a madman. He wondered if at least the dog was going to his owner and decided to follow him to see. The protagonist ran after the dog, and 3 minutes later, in the Central Park, a girl was taking a selfie for TikTok. The protagonist was surprised by the beauty of the girl and thought it was a 9 out of 10. He wondered what the probability was that she was the dog's owner. He concluded that it was 100%. Apparently, the owner was a beauty. Initially, he just thought about asking for money to find the dog. The girl was calm, taking several selfies. Seeing this, B thought that she was definitely stupid because the dog had been lost for a long time and she hadn't even noticed. Both approached the girl and she asked if he also had a husky since he was very similar to his dog, Orion. The protagonist looked at her thinking that she was dense and stupid. She crouched down to talk to the dog and commented that even the barks of his dog were similar to those of his dog, Orion. But Orion was a little prettier. He said that the husky seemed a little silly, less intelligent than his, and ate about 500 tons of dog food and that his fur was better. The boy, listening to these things, was left without reaction. And along with her, he was also left without reaction. However, he claimed that that was his dog. The girl replied that he was a joker because his dog was tied up there. 5 minutes later, she, embarrassed, thanked the protagonist by giving him his phone number. He said there was no problem since it was good that she could find his dog. In her posts, the boy saw a photo of the girl and the dog doing mischief. Seeing this, he commented that his dog was destroying everything, and that he would have expelled the dog if it were the owner, but he mentioned that he could not even expel it since they had expelled him from his house and he had nowhere to go. The girl literally ignored him and commented that if he did not have a house, he should simply buy one. The protagonist thought that maybe she was right. Now that he had the ability to see probabilities, why was he thinking of paying rent? He concluded that it would be easier to buy a house when he got rich, but he wondered how he would get rich and buy a house in the fastest way. He had no idea of the necessary value. Even bargaining and making a deposit with the 300,000, it would not be easy. He needed to think of a quick way to make money. The lottery was very suspicious and the shares would take a long time. Then he had the idea of seeing the old collections. Bayu arrived at the Chinese fair and the merchants were announcing their items. Suddenly, a guy with 2 teeth suggested to the protagonist to take a look at his porcelain collection. The other merchants began to form a circle around the protagonist, announcing what they wanted to sell. The fat seller on the right commented that the boy was a rookie, that he was all lost and should not know anything. The protagonist stopped and thought that those guys must think that he was a rookie, a group of Layans wanting to steal his money. The men suddenly told the boy that those were antiquities inherited from his ancestors, that his name was Lai and that apparently his ancestor was the poet Lai's son. The boy was surprised to hear this and said that he would take a look, but in his mind he affirmed that the merchants thought that he was a rookie, deciding to show what it was like to be a rookie that is never deceived. He wondered what was the probability that the articles there were true, concluding that it was 100% all true, so something was wrong there. Maybe it was based on his knowledge, or he needed to ask in a more precise way. He wondered what the probability was that the things in that store had a value greater than 10,000. He concluded that none had it. He asked the merchant about an article that responded to being by far the most valuable antiquity, offering it for 20,000 to the protagonist. He thought the merchant was a bastard who was trying to deceive him, selling something that was not worth 200 for 20,000 yuan. Bayu got up to leave and the merchant, seeing him, despaired. The boy thought that place would be difficult. There were bandits everywhere and no one sold good things. To buy something, he needed to sell it for at least 10,000. He looked at the fat man store and asked the system what was the probability of buying something worth 10,000 in that store. The probability was 10%, which gradually increased to 300,000. After that, the protagonist was sure that he could do a good business there. The fat man, seeing him approach his store, planned something malicious. He explained that buying antiquities was a matter of vision, that he worked with integrity and would never be like those unscrupulous merchants, and he suggested that they go to the prices, showing that the article shown was a good piece. Bayu interrupted him and said he didn't want it, since the probability showed a 0%. He claimed that he wanted the article that showed a 100% probability of selling for 500,000, while he thought that poor devil believed that he was a novice, and that he would not make any mistakes. With his ability to predict, he would easily choose only the most valuable things. The fat man thought the boy was stupid because that article was garbage, and asked mentally how he would increase the price of something so ugly. In his thoughts, the protagonist reflected that the seller must be thinking about how to increase the price. Giving a pat on the face, he thought it was better to remove that picaro smile, or the seller would realize that he was very confident. The boy took the vase that he wanted to sell again and explained that to collect antiquities you needed good eyes. He said that our boy had a good affinity and was humble, so his opinion was important. He suggested that he pay attention to the work at the base and stated that the vase was a handmade piece made by hand and with a clean sound, offering it for 50,000. He stated that, if Bayu acquired it there and sold it anywhere, he would make a fortune. He was confused with the fat man, and in his thoughts he wondered if the seller wanted to sell that garbage, imagining that maybe he didn't even know that that article was worth 500,000. After finishing his thoughts, he commented that the vase was really very beautiful, but that he did not feel an affinity with it and that he had found another very good article. The merchant smiled and replied that the boy had good eyes when he was interested in the bronze vase. It was a treasure excavated from his homeland and he would sell it for 8,000 because it seemed that he was very interested. He stated that that was the original price he paid and asked the boy what he thought. Bayu thought that compared to the original value of the article, 8,000 was nothing. However, he asked the system if the merchant knew the value of the vase, obtaining a clear 0%. Seeing these results, The boy thought that with probability he could deceive the seller without him knowing, but he wondered if he should pretend to be a novice or a poor man to make the seller lower the price even more and decided to try to discover the minimum for which he would sell it. He asked this system what was the probability that the fat man would sell for 4,000, which surprisingly dropped to 2,000 with a 100% probability. After this conclusion, Bayu stated that 8,000 was a bit high and asked if the seller could not lower the price a bit. The seller thought he had spent only a few cents to get that article along with a lot of other articles, realizing that it was the boy's first time in that place. He commented that 8,000 was not very expensive, but he let the boy mention a price he could pay. The protagonist said that he could only pay 2,000. The seller was surprised to hear the value and called him poor. The boy insisted on buying for 2,000, but faked a quick disinterest, forcing the seller to accept. The transaction of 2,000 yuan was made and the protagonist thought he had made a fortune with the fat man. The seller thought he had made a fortune with the boy, commenting that the day before he had sold an article that he bought for a few cents to a cute girl for 8,000, and now he sold for 2,000 an article that was worth nothing, already watching the protagonist trying to collect relics. Speaking of the girl from the day before, she suddenly appeared heading to the old Juan. Before she arrived, he was already saying that it was not his problem if she had not been able to sell, that she wanted to give that value for the article, and that her store was small and did not offer a refund. The girl asked if Juan had sold the vase that he had just sold. Without fuss, she claimed that she would pay 10 or even 50,000 for that bronze vase. The seller began to tremble with the amount, looking at Bayu from afar with the 50,000 that could be as in thought if that vase was worth so much and how the boy knew it. The girl kept looking, thinking why the old Juan was taking so long and if he was trying to increase the price. She claimed that if 50,000 was not enough, she would increase the offer to 60,000 or even 80,000. Impatient, the girl questioned why he did not give in and if he was deaf, asking him to answer. The friend next to him commented that he was impressed with the old Juan for wanting to sell for 80,000 a garbage that he bought for 300. The old man asked the girl if they would close the deal for 100,000 and she agreed, leaving the seller lying down. The friend laughed at the situation and said that the old Juan had already sold the vase for 2,000. The girl was amazed to learn that the article was sold. The old Juan got up and said he was going to get the vase back. In the middle of the crowd, someone shouted the amount of 300,000. Everyone turned around and the people in the crowd commented that the boy was lucky because the old man was offering 300,000 for the bronze chalice. The friend next door asked if the man was not referring to that chalice. The girl thought who was the bastard who bought the article, because he would regret getting in his way. The protagonist, gesticulating, rejected the amount. The crowd commented that the boy was rejecting a 300,000 offer and that he was crazy. The man increased to 350,000, which quickly rose to 4,000 and reinforced that he would not increase more. The protagonist sighed and said he would leave. The old man stopped him and asked him not to rush, telling him to tell his price. The boy replied that the old man was a professional and that he wanted to be his friend, so he suggested 500,000. The old man looked at him fixedly and replied that today's children were difficult, but he agreed to be his friend. The old Juan was already passed out in the crowd. A person in the middle of the crowd helped Juan and told him to relax, because he had heard that the boy bought the article in one of his stores. The guy who sold it should be twisting. He asked Juan if it had not been him. Juan desperately replied that he would never do that, because he had been negotiating antiques for a long time and would never sell something so cheap. That girl came in and said she offered 550,000 for the article. Our boy looked at her and thought she had beautiful skin, a beautiful face, long legs and that she was a complete beauty. Offering 550,000, she must be a rich enderer. He thought his goddess had finally appeared, but he could not be carried away by her beauty. With his current ability, that cat woman would be easy to conquer. The girl looked at him and thought that the disgusting man was looking at her with a strange face. But if his grandfather was not so strict, she would give up the chalice. But he had to buy it at any cost. The boy thought if the probability that she would buy the chalice was 100% and if she would pay even more. He turned to see the fat man and said that the seller had also come. He said that the chalice he bought from the old Juan for 2,000 was actually worth 550,000. The other merchants began to make fun of the fat man and he collapsed right there. The girl came running and said that she offered 550,000. It was take or leave. The old man on the other side asked for calm, saying that the girl was being irrational and that he had made her the first offer. She replied that the Lord had not yet closed the deal. That spoiled girl reminded him of someone. The two looked at the protagonist, who said that he was not the one who was buying, asking for the two of them to talk to each other. The girl thought it was a cheap trick to want to increase the price, thinking that she and the man were stupid. However, seconds later, both were increasing the price, which gradually reached 600,000. The man was going to say 700, but he thought and said that the girl seemed familiar to him. He asked if the crazy old man from Haimen was his grandfather. The woman, surprised, replied that he was his grandfather and asked who the man was. The old man said that the world was small, that he was a friend of his grandfather and that his grandfather must have sent him to buy the chalice. He introduced himself as Li Go, a history professor at the University of Hangzhou just like his grandfather. The girl replied that he was the old man that her father talked so much about. The Lord asked how his grandfather was doing. She replied that he was very well and that he always walked in the mornings. Bayu, confused, asked if they were going to buy or not. The girl, bewildered, replied with an angry tone that yes, pushing the old man, told him to take care, and suggested that he go out to have tea with his grandfather and that later she would pick him up. With that, 600,000 fell into Bayu's account. In his thoughts, he said that he got more than he expected, 100,000 more than the initial price, and that now he was almost a millionaire thanks to his touch of gold. He thought this was equal to the powers that the anime protagonists received, and if that was the case, he asked the girl why she didn't give him her number. She made a face of surprise and disgust. The protagonist thought he should calm down, that the girl seemed interested in antiquities, and that, when he found something very good, he would call her. She looked at him and thought it was horrible and wondered who he thought he was, a toad who kisses the princess, and found him too ugly, feeling disgusting. The boy asked the girl if he was going to answer. She, surprised and afraid, asked what he meant by the phrase, his girl. In his thoughts, the girl called him a piece of shit, thinking he was being too informal with her. Turning around to him, he asked if he thought he was older than her so as not to be being educated. The protagonist asked the system what the probability was that the girl was older than him, and the answer was 0%. Observing that she was very proud, he thought she was worthy of being his wife, but she did not know that he had his success rate. Surrounding the girl, Bayu asked the system what the probability was that the Empress was 20 years old, and the answer was 100%. He and she are 20 years old. He was born on September 30 and began to think about the date of her birth, which was not born in October and much less in December. Our boy asked the system if they were born on the same day, and the answer was 100%. He was born at 3:23 in the afternoon, so the girl must have been born between 7 in the morning and noon. The answer was negative, so he asked if she was born after 5, with the answer being negative. However, they were born at 3:30 with a minute difference. Bayu thought she was trying to get older, but he was older than her by a minute. The protagonist began to say that the girl turned 20 this year and was born at the end of September. The girl turned around, confused. He continued, stating that she must be wondering how he knows and says that it is just a prediction skill. She looked at him and replied that anyone can get that information on the internet and that he should stop telling jokes, because he was leaving. The protagonist then defies, saying that he wants to see how he reacts when he says this. He does the calculations and claims that she was born in September in the afternoon, around 3:30. The girl was in shock, not knowing what to say. People in the crowd commented that he went too far to investigate the girl and that he must be a pervert. The protagonist thought that this should not happen. She tries to escape, but he insists by saying that it is not over yet. He claims that she was born at 3:24, and even more daring, at 3 hours, 24 minutes and 36 seconds. The girl, sweating cold, takes out her cell phone and calls her mother asking her exactly when she was born. The mother confirms that it was at 3:24 and 36 seconds. The girl, extremely confused, says nothing. The protagonist asks her to say something, because she is starting to be afraid that she will only look at him. She replies that she cannot help but be curious, because he is strange and says that he is leaving. He tries to explain himself by saying that he was joking and that he only guessed. She does not believe him, saying that he got it right until the seconds and now he treats her as if she were an idiot, asking what the trick is. The protagonist thinks that she looks even more beautiful when she is angry and replies that it was just a logical deduction and a little guessing. She asks if he is really serious about guessing. Bayu says that not all guessers are liars and comments that today she is wearing black underwear. She gets angry at hearing that. He asks, loudly, why he does not see his boyfriend and what is the probability that she is single. He deduces that he has never liked any man. She, extremely embarrassed, asks what he is saying. The crowd around her is looking at her and the protagonist says that he said it clearly. The woman grabs him and they both run to a more private place. She puts her foot on the wall and demands that he say how he knows all that about her. Bayu replies that it is just his calculations and guesses. She does not believe him and he defies her, saying that he knows where the 3 birthmarks are in his body and that knowing someone's orientation is much easier than that. She is in shock and at the same time shy and angry. Sometime later, the protagonist is adding his contact. He says that, if he has something good to sell, he will let him know, and add that, if she wants any guessing advice, she can ask him. In his thoughts, he reflects that his guess rate is so good that he can discover even people's secrets. I did not expect to learn so much from that girl. Observing the situation, he realizes that that man he knew is calling someone. He wonders if he heard that conversation. He asks the system what is the probability that the girl's family will discover that she has no interest in men. Initially, it is 0%. However, the situation changes. The secret is increasing and the probability of being discovered reaches 100%. He concludes that this probably happened because of the conversation in public, wondering if the man had already called the family. He gets desperate because he did not expect that to happen. He sends a message to the girl and tells her that due to the 600,000, maybe the secret is no longer a secret for her family. She runs trying to find the protagonist, but he has already hidden. Suddenly, his parents got in touch to talk about it. From afar, he only watches her, and the family on the phone tells him to go home because his mother and father have something to ask him. Bayu thinks that his ability to guess is a blessing for him, but a curse for others. Suddenly his cell phone rings. His mother has arranged a blind date for him. Although he refuses, the date is already scheduled for 8:15 at night. At the restaurant, they plan to leave as it is taking too long, and he praises the girls of the place. He sees a woman with blue hair entering the establishment, accompanied by Kim Kim. The system confirms that Kim Kim has a 100% interest in the woman with blue hair. The woman with blue hair looks at Bayu fixedly, quickly takes Kim Kim's hand off her arms and begins to cry. Bayu thinks that Kim Kim is looking at him as if he wanted to kill him. The woman with blue hair approaches and asks if he is Bayu. Presenting himself as Muur, he says that he thinks he is a good man to go out with. People around him are in disbelief with the situation and Bayu gets even more confused. Kim Kim falls into desperate tears. Bayu comments that the situation is strange. Mui asks if he does not feel attracted to her. He replies that yes, that she is incredible in all aspects. In his thoughts, he wonders how to get out of this situation. Mui approaches and whispers in his ear that he is serious, and that it is not a joke, hugging him later. In doubt if it is a dream, he asks the system that gives him the 0% result. The girl looks at him and gives him a forced kiss, leaving Kim Kim devastated. Mui tells him to follow her to meet his parents. Bayu deduces that Mui is not in love with him, but is using him as a shield so that Kim Kim gives up. Hesitant, he wonders if he really wants to introduce him to his parents. Mui, seeing his hesitation, asks him if he regretted it. The protagonist thinks that she kissed him and that he should not be involved in this. Seeing Mu shed a tear, Bayu decides to go with her. Arriving at his house, she announces his arrival. The mother asks how the date went and if it failed again. Mui introduces Bayu as her boyfriend, and he, trembling, greets the mother calling her Miss Mu. In thoughts, he wonders how he ended up there, but decides to act to help Mui. Her mother is surprised and happy, while the father in the kitchen shouts happily. He approaches and asks Bayu where he and his daughter met. Mui says they have known each other since high school, but that they did not talk much and surprisingly now they are together. The father is suspicious, but the mother says it is wonderful to hear that. The father takes Bayu to a place and says that his wife is going to cook something delicious for them, taking them to her daughter's bed and asking them to sit down. Before Bayu can speak, the parents have already left the room. He asks the system if those are her relatives and the system confirms with 100% certainty. The mother comes in shortly after bringing fruits, but the father throws her out saying that he is interrupting the fun of the two and that they must take advantage of the time together. Mui, embarrassed, explains that her parents are excited because it is the first time that she brings a boyfriend. The protagonist thinks he was very lucky to get involved with the girl, observing that his parents seem very excited. Behind the door, the parents listen and the father wonders why the two are so quiet, considering that it is the perfect opportunity for them. The mother, afraid, expresses her concern about what the young man could do with her daughter. The old man asks for calm and claims that they cannot let them notice it and assures that the knife is sharpened for any eventuality. In the room, Bayu is confused by the situation and decides to clarify everything. She gets up, but Mui, scared, runs away from him. Bayu calms her down, saying that she just wants to talk. Muur, thinking that he wanted to fight, apologizes and says that he still needs to get used to the relationship. He understands his nervousness and moves away a little, but she, embarrassed, asks him not to stay so far. Our boy closely observes the beauty of Mui and wonders about the possibility of taking his hand without her feeling repulsed, estimating a probability of 80%. Thinking of a hug, the possibility decreases to 76%, and for a kiss, the probability is 59%. He wonders if he would succeed, but remembers that he is just a fake boyfriend to deceive the parents. Confused by the situation, he decides not to get involved anymore. When Bayu tries to explain, he trips and falls to the ground. Mui's father opens the door desperately, asking what he is doing with his daughter, and she asks the father what he is doing. The mother quickly takes the father out of the room. Bayu, confused, wonders if the father had a knife in his hand and thinks he was close. He concludes that the father really did not believe that he was his daughter's boyfriend. The mother, while hitting the father, asks him to explain why he had the knife. The father replies that he is only protecting his daughter, and that there is nothing wrong with that. The boy thinks that pretending to be Mui's boyfriend is dangerous and was almost cut into pieces, wanting to get out of that situation. She asks him if he is okay, impressing him again with his beauty. The protagonist decides that he does not want to get involved in this family matter anymore, so he says that they need to discuss the situation again. Mui, surprised and somewhat angry, asks him if he regrets it. Bayu argues that he does not want to continue deceiving his parents and that the situation will only be resolved with a serious conversation with them. Mui, holding his arm, begs him to help her only this time. Outside, the father asks if they are fighting, while the mother responds ignoring him and saying that it is his fault. Our boy leaves the room, passing between the two, approaches the door determined not to stay any longer. When he begins to put on his shoe, the mother tells him not to put on his shoe since she wet it while cooking. However, she thinks he cannot leave like that and suggests that he spend the night there. The father agrees and once again reinforces this suggestion to Bayu. He makes up an excuse about a sick nephew and decides to leave. In bed, the protagonist thinks that making money that way, being safe and calm, is the only way. Back in the antique auction, the old Huan, still resentful, prepares relics and is surprised when he sees Bayu. Huan tries to sell a set of porcelain, stating that it is of great value. Bayu, using his system, discovers that the items are genuine and are worth much more than the price offered. After a quick negotiation, Bayu decides to buy the pieces, surprising Juan and running out with his acquisition. The old Juan considers the possibility that some of those items are true, but quickly discards the idea, thinking that the protagonist is just a beginner who gave him a profit of $500,000. In the corner, a pink car stops in front of the store. A girl gets out of the car and asks Juan where the Tanzanka artifacts are and what she sold the night before. She offers $1 million for them back, claiming that porcelain in that set is very important to her grandfather. Juan is shocked, and the girl insists on begging and explaining that it belongs to her grandfather and should not have sold that piece. The fat man replies that he wanted to sell, but that he already sold it to someone. Juan's colleague comments that the boy paid $500,000 for that. Hearing that, the girl falls into tears of despair. The old Juan tries to console the girl, saying that the articles were false. She, angry, shouts that there was a true piece of Tanzanka and in the set that was worth offers of $10 million. The other seller, making fun of Juan, highlights that he sold something of great value for very little. Inside a pawn shop, a man analyzes the item bought by Bayu. The old man comments on the impeccable condition of the piece and compares it with another he owns. The protagonist thinks that the possibility that the item belongs to the man is 100%, and the system confirms it. The old buyer offers $9 million for it, a value that Bayu accepts promptly. Our boy, now richer, receives a card from the buyer and leaves. Outside, he sees the girl in the pink car running towards the place. He thinks that the possibility that she will trip is 100% and warns her, avoiding the fall. Despite the warning, the girl ends up tripping and Bayu holds her, preventing her from falling. Confused, the girl asks how she knew she was going to fall, while the people around question the scene. The girl asks to be released, but Bayu replies that she is the one who needs to release him. After a brief confrontation, she finally lets go and Bayu leaves. However, the girl orders him to stop. She writes down her number on her cell phone, claiming that she will solve the situation later. Bayu is surprised and looks at the girl's profile on the phone, thinking about her new wealth, considering buying a car or a house. As he walks, the old man Wan asks if he has already sold the porcelain and for how much. Bayu replies that he sold it for $9 million, and Wan unexpectedly congratulates him, despite having lost a large amount. The fat man from afar plans something malicious against our boy. Back at the house of commitments, the granddaughter arrives while the old man analyzes the item. She notices that he already bought it and, nervous, tries to get out quickly. The grandfather notices the nervousness and calls her to speak, suspecting that he has done something wrong again, because the last time the granddaughter was like this, he sold a porcelain of his for 10 yuan, and the buyer came to his store selling it for a very high value. The old man begins to join the points and the granddaughter, desperate, flees the place. Running, the girl reflects on the speed of the transaction and the need to recover the piece before her value is discovered. She remembers the boy who mentioned that she would fall and wonders if she has such a good vision. Bayu feels a chill, asking the system if it is because of the old Wan, and the possibility is confirmed 100%. Then he speculates if Wan will try to deceive him with false relics again, and the system confirms it. Thinking about his chances of success, Bayu concludes that he needs to diversify his strategies, so as not to depend only on antiquities. He reflects on his recent interactions, including with crazy women, and has an idea when confirming that there will be a valuable item in the pavilion the next day. While they plan to buy a car, Bayu sees the girl at the bus stop and observes that she published the stories that the car left in her grandfather's store. He perceives a suspicious man with a sweatshirt and alerts the girl, getting nervous and questioning her intentions. The bus is arriving and the girl ignores Bayu's warning. The man begins to approach when he tries to harass her. She reacts violently, surprising Bayu with her strength. He concludes that she must practice martial arts, while the girl is impressed with Bayu's ability to predict events. Trying to get away from her, Bayu thinks about how long it will take her to reach the concession area. However, after some thought, he begins to suspect a possible fireman on the bus. The system confirms that there is a criminal with 9 liters of gasoline planning to set the vehicle on fire. Desperate, Bayu calls the police, who initially distrusts his detailed information. Bayu discovers that there is a police officer on the bus, but he does not know who the fireman is. Using the system, he identifies the suspect in the back of the bus with a large backpack. The girl notices that he is nervous, puts her hand on his shoulder, and asks him why he is running away from her. Seeing an opportunity, he shouts, calling her, "Brute gorilla girl." The protagonist thinks that by doing that, the criminal will be distracted and perhaps alert the police. The girl looks at him with anger and launches into aggression. The protagonist pulls aside, opening the criminal's bag full of gasoline. The girl punches the criminal in the face, a knee in the stomach, and when she falls, she kicks him upside down on the nape, leaving him on the ground. She marries the criminal and analyzes the liquid, revealing that it is really gasoline. The protagonist is surprised to realize that the girl was a police officer. At the bus stop outside, Bayu tries to leave discreetly. The girl interrupts his departure and tells him that he was the one who reported everything to the police, and asks him if he would not like to give an explanation. He thinks that the girl will give him problems all the time and is on top of him. Bayu replies that if he counts, she needs to keep the secret, otherwise he will get into trouble because of her. The girl in thought wonders if he has any kind of power, because she is guessing too much. Bayu notices that she is not believing anything. She continues to insist and he does not know what to say. The girl asks again how she knew that a man was trying to set the bus on fire. Bayu replies that it was just a coincidence, because it is his duty to help society. The girl does not believe him and puts him against the wall, saying that he was not even on the bus when he called the police and that he had not even found the suspect yet. But even so, he knew he had 8 liters of gasoline. The protagonist's fake girlfriend is watching the situation. Bayu replies to the girl who only guessed. She, hearing this, asks if her guesses now predict the future and says that they are going to take a walk to the police station. The fake girlfriend arrives and asks what he is doing. The police ask if the two know each other, and the fake girlfriend replies that yes, asking if he is okay. The protagonist in thought realizes that the situation is escalating and becoming even more worrying, and maybe it is an opportunity. He looks at the fake girlfriend and says that it is not what she is thinking, that he did nothing with that girl because they have no relationship, but she is following him. Pointing to the police, Bayu says that he told him that he has a girlfriend and asks why she continues to harass him. Cao Cao desperately says that it has nothing to do with that. The crowd comments that, to be honest, the girl is really following Bayu. Hearing this, the police feel ashamed and angry at the same time. Bayu continues with the scene saying that the girl does not leave him alone no matter what he does. The fake girlfriend intervenes and says that he is her boyfriend and asks the girl to stop bothering. The police do not want to give up, but give in. Approaching, he punches Bayu and says that he is not interested in him, but warns him to be careful, because his boyfriend may not be such a good person. Bayu gets up and the fake girlfriend shows concern. He says it hurt a little, but at least he got rid of that problem and thanks for the help. Mu says it was not a big deal, since he helped him in that situation, so now they are at hand. The daughter of the devil, who in this case is Kim Kim, is observing the situation and did not like to see Bayu getting involved with Mu. The next day, the protagonist reflects on the previous day and decides not to get involved with those crazy women. He only wants money and decides to go to the pavilion. Upon arrival, he sees that the old Wang is not there and the seller next door says that he went to the campus and will return soon. In thoughts, Bayu wonders if he will be able to buy some of the old Wang today and if he can buy from other stores. Our boy realizes that he will not find any valuable relic today and decides to look anyway. Sometime later, he finds an article that the system confirms is 100% genuine. He asks the merchant the value of the article, which answers to be 3,000 yuan. Bayu asks for a 50% discount and the seller quickly accepts. He thinks the seller has no idea that the article is authentic and decides to buy it immediately. That girl arrives and tells the merchant to sell it to her and that he will pay the original 3,000 yuan. The merchant withdraws Bayu's article and extends it to the girl. Seeing this, Bayu panics and offers 10,000 yuan. The girl does not fall behind and offers 30,000 yuan. Bayu thinks the girl did it on purpose, and now the seller will notice that the article is much more valuable and will not sell it easily. He says he will give 50,000 and that, if she really loves him so much, he will offer a higher value and it will be his. And the girl increases the offer to 100,000 yuan. Bayu gets angry and thinks he can't fool Kinkin, wondering if she will increase the price even more. Kinkin, meanwhile, believes that Bayu is acting to sell a fake article. Finally, he accepts the defeat. While Bayu is leaving, he thinks that Kinkin entered the auction without analyzing well because he trusts his system to find many other products. Receiving the product, she reflects that it really seems to be from the Jin dynasty, recognizing Bayu's talent. As he walks, he realizes that the girl is following him and asks him why. She replies that the street is not his and that it is not his fault. Bayu keeps going from store to store and Kinkin follows him, always making higher offers. Finally, he asks him if he is doing it on purpose. Kinkin claims that he can do whatever he wants, since he has a lot of money and doesn't care. She reveals personal information about Bayu, questioning his sudden rise and accusing him of cheating. Desperate, the protagonist defends himself, claiming that he was only lucky with the relics. Kinkin says that his threats scared him, and Bayu replies that she will not be able to prevent him from earning money. She laughs and defies him, claiming that she will not earn a penny that day. Bayu decides to pretend to be interested in several items to confuse Kinkin. Suddenly, he asks all the sellers to sell him all the items. The girl, realizing the tactic, tells the sellers that she will buy everything with an increase of 10%, while Bayu challenges her to buy everything. The sellers, encouraged, agree to sell her to her. Bayu makes fun of her, showing the transfer she received from the merchants as part of her plan. Kinkin gets angry and promises revenge. Bayu only laughs, claiming that his threats are false. The story continues with Bayu leaving the pavilion. In front of his car, a man is standing and asks him if he is Bayu, presenting himself as the mayordomo of Miss Kinkin. Bayu asks if the man is there to put him to sleep forever, warning that if so, he will need more men than just the mayordomo. The mayordomo replies that Bayu has misunderstood everything, explaining that his lady sent him to invite him to a meeting of celebrities, as an apology for what happened today. Bayu is surprised and thinks that a meeting of celebrities, as an apology, does not make sense coming from Kinkin. However, he recognizes that if he goes to a place like this, he will find many rich people, being a perfect opportunity to increase his list of contacts. After many thoughts, Bayu finally accepts the proposal of the mayordomo. An hour later, he is at the door of the place. Kinkin opens the door and says that she did not expect him to be there since it took so long. The protagonist replies that he never expected to be invited. Kinkin looks at him and tells him to follow her because he is going to introduce him to some people. The presentations of the guests begin, starting with the successor of the Shanghai group, then the owner of Star Tech, and ending with the owner of Heavy Media. Kinkin asks Bayu if he knows the guests introduced, and he is impressed with them. She, seeing his reaction, thinks about the ignorance of the boy who got nervous when he saw someone famous. Bayu quickly understands the situation and thinks that the girl wants to make him look stupid for being nervous. He knows that when he is nervous, thinking about that only makes things worse. The secret to breaking that cycle is to think about how people go to the bathroom. The peculiar strategy works and Bayu begins to greet the guests correctly and without nervousness. Kinkin is amazed to see Bayu's calm. 5 minutes later, the two are sitting at a table. She says she was surprised to see that he can talk to those people. Bayu replies that there is no difference between a celebrity and a normal person. The girl gets serious and says that she will soon see the difference between them. The master of ceremonies arrives to make the announcement, saying that the dear guests must enter the main theme of the illustrious meeting, a charity auction. Bayu is surprised to know that there will be such an event. Seeing an opportunity, she tries to make fun of him and asks if he does not know that it is a charity auction. Our boy gets serious and says that he is not stupid not to know that there is the event. Kinkin changes the subject and says that he has a porcelain plate from the Ming dynasty that he wants to put in the auction, and as Bayu is an expert in relics, he gives it to him and asks him to estimate the price and make an offer for her. Bayu, devoid of intelligence, asks if she is going to let him estimate the price himself and make the offer. The girl replies that she is giving him such good help that she can even use her name in the offer. She reminds him that he wants money, and says that this is a good opportunity to improve his reputation in front of all those people. Bayu is thoughtful, recognizing that she is right. He knows that if he manages to improve his reputation with those rich people, he will be able to take advantage of his ability much more. However, he gets serious and asks if she is making fun of him in some way and why she is being so kind to him. Kinkin sighs and replies that she has given up and does not want to be his enemy. Our boy still suspects and begins to talk to the system. He asks if Kinkin gave him a fake product. The system replies that the product is genuine, being 100% of the mini dynasty that was recently sold for 2.5 million. The protagonist thinks that the relic may be real, but maybe there is something wrong with the auction. He asks if the auction will go well and the system indicates a 100% success. With the piece being true and the auction guaranteed, Bayu concludes that he has nothing to worry about, recognizing that he is thinking too much and that even if she wants to do something, he has the system on his side and has nothing to fear. After these thoughts, Kinkin tries to take the box from Bayu. He asks for calm and she says that if he does not love her, it is better to forget it. Bayu replies that he accepts his kindness. The auctioneer raises his hand and announces that the next and last piece of the beneficial auction is the relic in possession of Mr. Bayu. He looks back and sees Kinkin with a malicious smile, thinking that his expression indicates something strange. The auctioneer continues, announcing the last relic in possession of Bayu. Bayu feels insecure and thinks that it is useless to think too much. The piece is real and the system guaranteed a 100% success in the auction. Then, he decides to see what Kinkin's trick is. Bayu turns to the audience and begins to introduce himself. During the presentation, he reveals the article that he is going to auction, but unexpectedly it is a roll of toilet paper. The audience is surprised, wondering if Bayu has some kind of mental illness. Nervous about the situation, he thinks he knew it wouldn't be that easy. Remembering when Kinkin asked him to pick up a pendant that fell to the ground, that was the moment when she must have changed the articles. The auctioneer asks Bayu if she wants to go to the bathroom, questioning why she would bring a roll of toilet paper to the auction. Kinkin makes fun of him, thinking about how Bayu will handle the situation. He thinks that if he runs away, she will feel even more and despise him. In addition, it would be a shame for the rest of his life. The protagonist decides that he has to sell the article, since the probability of success in the auction is 100%. With the paper in hand, Bayu begins to tell a story about how the roll of toilet paper is the most precious gift he has received. He remembers his childhood when they called him Crybaby, and on his birthday, he received the roll of toilet paper from his parents, who told him that men are willing to bleed, but not to shed tears. Shortly after that, Bayu's parents died unexpectedly. His family was very poor and all they had was debts. Whenever he could not contain himself, he took a piece of paper and wiped his tears, telling himself that he had to be strong and move on. And so, step by step, he got to that moment. Bayu claims that the roll of toilet paper is the testimony of his suffering, and at that important moment, he decides to auction the most important article to be able to contribute to charity. The public does not seem to care about Bayu's story, but a man in the background, smoking, says that he liked the story and offers 100,000. The auctioneer raises his hand and ends the auction, affirming that the sale is closed. Bayu sighs with relief, thinking that he was lucky to be good at inventing stories in times of pressure. He looks at Kim, thinking that she wanted him to go wrong. She says she was lucky this time, but the next one will be impossible. Our boy thinks he saved his skin, but his plan to meet celebrities has gone astray. Now he is seen as a clown by those people. Bayu concludes that he will have to work hard to earn money and gain power, status, and dignity. A car passes by Bayu, with Mui and the boss who bought the toilet paper. Confused, our boy asks the system why they are together. The system replies that they have a collaborative business and are about to get married. Bayu realizes that the system is smarter, possibly due to the update. He reflects on how the world of the rich is a disaster and decides that he wants to earn money in a calm way, going back to the old methods. Thinking of the old Wan, he asks the system if the old Wan has recently found a gift. The system warns that the old Wan is going to pick up a treasure. The protagonist is left thinking that the old Wan is very strange. He always has treasures, but it is our boy who stays with the fortune. He wonders if he should not cooperate directly with Wan, since he seems to have a lot of access to antiquities. If there is any inconvenience, Wan can still intervene for him. The next day in the pavilion, the fat man is talking to someone on the cell phone. He asks why the person has not yet arrived and mentions that he has been waiting a long time. The boy suddenly appears and Wan asks what he is doing there, saying that he has nothing for him. The boy replies that the old Wan should not get angry. He is there to talk about a collaboration, because Wan is a lucky person who always buys good things. The boy mentions that he can see all those valuable things, and if they work together, he guarantees that they will be the best partners in the future with a 50-50 division for each one. The fat man asks why he needs to work with the boy, saying that he has been in this business for a long time and knows what he is doing, affirming that the boy should not tell him what to do and that he should be ashamed to talk about collaboration, suggesting that he is there to affect his credibility again. The fat man tells the boy to stay away from his sight, saying that he does not want to see him again. The protagonist thinks that the fat man hates him for the last two incidents. He concludes that, now that Boss Wan is already angry, anything he says will only worsen the situation. He decides that it is better to retire for now, because it is not worth fighting. At some other time there will be the opportunity to talk to him sooner or later. The old Wan will cooperate. After that, two men pass by Bayu and go to talk to the fat man, who asks why they took so long to arrive and asks them to show the article. A man with a hat looks around suspiciously and says that he is very sure that that is the 7-star Kayako sword, which has been kept for a long time. The fat man replies that he did not need to say it, because he can see it with his own eyes. The boy thinks about the 7-star Kayako sword and looks closely. He asks the system if it is a real sword and what is the probability that it is a genuine product, obtaining the answer that the probability is 0%. The old Wan says that it looks like something good and asks when they want to make the transaction. The protagonist begins to think about what is happening to Wan and why he is going to buy a fake article. He wonders if the falsification is so good that the fat man cannot see it, and the system informs him that the probability that he sees that it is false is 0%. The protagonist concludes that these two men must produce very good replicas, but that they cannot hide from his eyes. He tries to identify which part of the sword is false, but cannot see it. The system asks if he is stupid and opens a screen of the article and begins to show him several parts. The boy thinks that the false part can be the jewel, but concludes that the old Wan has a good eye for artifacts and would know from the beginning if the jewel was false. Bayu wonders if it is a false background of the jewel, and if Wan would believe him if he told him that the sword is false. He decides to use his special tactic, because he has no other option. He approaches and the fat man hides the sword, telling him to leave. Our boy asks calmly and says that he heard the conversation about the 7-star sword. He looks at it closely and realizes that the ability of the one who created it is very good, being very similar to the original. The old Wan doubts and says that the sword is perfect. He mentions that he has been caring for antiquities for 10 years and knows very well what is false and what is real. The fat man suspects that Bayu also wants the sword, and that is why he is saying those things. The old Wan asks why he does not leave him alone, claiming that he has never had anything against him. The protagonist proposes that if he proves that the sword is false, the boss Wan agrees to cooperate with him in the future. He replies that if the sword is real, Bayu could be saying that it is false to buy it later and claims that he does not believe him. The boy asks what is the price of the sword and Wan reveals that it is worth 500,000. Bayu says that if the item is not false, he will pay the fat man 10 times the value. Placing the sword on Bayu's chest, the fat man accepts the challenge and tells him to prove that the sword is false, affirming that he is sure that it is a genuine product. The boy asks everyone to observe carefully, and with a bottle in his hand, he hits the item causing a yellow jewel to come loose. He puts the item on the fat man's face, revealing a QR code. This proves that the item is false, leaving the old Wan very angry. When Wan looks back, the two men have run away. The fat man turns around and asks how the boy knew it was a false sword, suggesting that he hired the bribes just to make the collaboration. The boy replies that if he could have a product of that level, he would have tried to collaborate with Wan and sell it to him. And as for his methods, he says that the people of the mountain like him have magical methods. Wan asks Bayu not to be so arrogant. He gives a chance and announces again the collaboration for artifacts between the two. The fat man responds negatively, saying that they are not going to collaborate. He calls the protagonist weird boy and claims that he cannot decipher it, predicting that he could report it in the future. Wan suggests that the protagonist look for another person to collaborate. Our boy tries to convince Wan, reminding him of the bet they made and asks if he is going to break his promise. Wan replies that he has worked in this market for a long time, and that no one is honest there, referring to the two men who were there before. The fat man ends by saying that there will be no collaboration, but offers the protagonist to choose anything from the store as a thank you for his help. Bayu feels intrigued by the situation and asks about all the items there. Wen is proud of the treasures he owns and shows a cloak and a bowl with great stories, but the protagonist comments that they seem to be simple and common items. The old Wen is left without reaction to criticism, but tries to value the artifacts he owns despite the defects pointed out. The protagonist is disappointed with what he has seen so far and begins to think about what the system said, that today you would find something valuable with Wen, but so far nothing. Then he takes something out of a bag, announcing a double sword used by Liu Bai and Liu Xuanzhang in the Three Kingdoms and assures that it is 100% real. Bayu doubts that the item is real and asks the system. The system confirms with a 100% probability, but still has no specific information on the item. Our boy feels incredulous with this statement, even with doubts, asks if it really is real. Wen assures that yes and refuses to give it to Bayu, since it is a valuable piece of which he hopes to obtain great benefits. The protagonist realizes that this is the opportunity he was waiting for and decides to act to acquire that sword. He provokes Wen, mentioning that before they also believed in the 7-star sword, asking him what the great treasure is this time. The fat man gets angry and calls him stupid for not seeing the details. Bayu continues to provoke him, saying that he also believed in the details of the 7-star sword, insinuating that this double sword must also have a QR code. Wen is discouraged when he realizes that he could have been deceived again, feeling disappointed with himself for trusting the artifacts. Before Wen throws the sword to the ground, the protagonist interrupts him and asks for his price. The fat man, resigned, tells the protagonist to take whatever he wants because he is discouraged by the situation. Bayu is grateful, but decides that he needs to sell the sword for a good price so as not to feel guilty. He plans to use the sword to gain Wen's trust and explore future opportunities in the circle of antiquities. Our boy goes to Mr. Shi, asking for him to a woman who replies that Mr. Shi is busy. The protagonist asks the system if Shi knew that he was present in that place, if he would attend him, with the system confirming with a 100% probability. Bayu announces to the woman that the person responsible for selling Tian Shanqi is present. She is surprised and says that she will call Mr. Shi immediately. The protagonist feels a chill when he hears a voice that recognizes him as the seller of Tan Shankai. He turns around and sees the gorilla girl getting ready to face him. The system alerts about an imminent fight with a 100% probability of injury. The girl tries to attack him, but the protagonist manages to dodge and runs away. Mr. Shi, who is the girl's grandfather, arrives and reprimands her, asking her to calm down. She leaves, warning Bayu not to appear in front of her again. The protagonist knows that he escaped for a short time, but is aware that Xiao Xiao will not leave him alone. Mr. Shi apologizes for the behavior of his granddaughter and explains that she is not bad, but simply impulsive. Bayu watches Mr. Shi, realizing that he is thinking about something important. The system warns that he still cannot read minds without the necessary updates. Mr. She invites Bayu to have a tea and talk, indicating that there are important issues that must be discussed. Our boy entered the room and commented that the tea room of the Lord was extraordinary. The old man replied that he thought the room was a mess, but it was not something that anyone could have, adding that if he was not wrong, the young man must have come with some treasure. He confirmed that yes, telling Mr. Shi to take a look at that specific piece. The Lord examined it and said that it looked like a treasure from the Taohan, Oriental dynasty. Bayu felt confident, asserting and adding that ordinary things were not worthy of Mr. Shi, affirming that only objects as precious as that deserve to be in the collection of the old man. The old man explained that that was a double Oriental sword to me that had been auctioned for 5 million. Our boy suggested that that sword was used by Liu Ba. The Lord was surprised, commenting that if that were the case, the price would increase 10 times. The protagonist continued, saying that large objects must be used by great masters and that he thought that the Lord was the perfect match for that sword, mentioning that the youngest generation wanted to give that sword as a gift to express their admiration. The old man asked why the young man wanted to give something so good to an old man like him, commenting that if the young man sold that sword to an international buyer, he would have money to go to heaven. The boy replied that the most important thing was that the sword found a good master like the old man. Mr. Shi, looking at him directly, put the sword on the table and said that it was fine, but first they had to have the first tea. Bayu looked, wondering if the old man was not satisfied with the sword or if he was dissatisfied with it. The system replied that the satisfaction rate with the sword was 100%, while with the young men it was only 10%. The old man replied that that gift was too much and that he would not dare to accept it. He explained that he made friendships by character and the ability of people, not by gifts. He proposed that they were only gentlemen colleagues. The protagonist reflected that that rejection was direct. He wondered if the old man thought that he was not qualified to be his friend. The system confirmed that the perception was that he was not qualified. The Lord explained that the sword was an excellent piece and that its market price was 5 million. He assured the young man that he would pay according to that price, and he said that if the young man found something even better in the future, he could bring it, and he would not treat him badly. The protagonist thinks that he was going to give that sword as a gift to make friends with the old man, but he rejected it because he believed that the young man was not qualified. Finding the old man interesting, he highlighted that without skill he could not be his friend. He turned to the old man and said that in business it was not only a matter of money, but that skills and competencies were also important. The Lord asked what he meant by that. Our boy replied that he had just said that if that sword had been used by Liu Ba, It would be worth 50 million. The old man asked if he was so sure that that sword was used by Liu Ba. Our protagonist confirmed that yes, saying that the old man must be wondering how he knew that. Mr. She commented that he noticed that the young man had talented eyes and asked how he knew that. He explained that he was actually an ordinary person, but that he learned about guessing calculations. The Lord asked what he was talking about and if he knew how to see any antiquity just by calculating. Bayu confirmed that yes, and that they were not just antiquities. He commented that at that moment, Cao was outside that window trying to listen to that conversation. Outside, the girl was trying to climb. The young woman thought that Bayu was going to try to deceive her grandfather again, so she needed to hear what they were talking about. When she looked up, her grandfather was looking at her. Our protagonist greeted Cao, explaining that he did not expect her to have that ability. She asked why he was provoking her. The grandfather shouted, scaring the girl, saying that she was wrong and ran away. Our young man continued, asking if the Lord now believed that he could guess things. The old man replied that maybe he had only heard the movement outside, and deduced that it was Cao, explaining that that was not enough to convince him that the young man could predict things. Our protagonist thought that the old man was really difficult. He asked the Lord how he could make him believe in him. The old man replied that if he could guess, that question should not be asked to him. Our young man thought about what to do for the old man to believe in him. If he could not convince him quickly at that moment, things would only get stranger in the future. Wondering what the possibility of convincing him was, the system gave him an 87% probability. It was high, but it did talk to him about all the antiquities in the room. What would the probability be? The system gave a 100% probability. After his thoughts, he told Mr. Shi that he observed his dining room and realized that it had 26 antiquities. The Lord replied that seeing that it has 26 antiquities only showed that he knew how to count, so that had nothing to do with the guess. The protagonist asked Mr. Shi to listen carefully to what he had to say. The old man replied that everything was heard. Our boy thought that with the old man still calm, there was no reason to worry. He activated the system and various information in 3D emerged. After an explosion of data, he began to speak specific details of an item. The old man replied that the boy was doing well. Bayu continued to say that the set was a real utensil that was worth around $20 million. The old man confirmed, but said that that was not enough to convince him. Then, Bayu mentioned that the Black Jade platform was an object of the Ming Dynasty revolution that was worth around 5 million, and that it had also been used by Shan Zuxian, assistant chief of the Wenlin Dynasty cabinet. Surprised, Mr. Shi asked how Bayu knew that, because it took 2 years for all the elders to discover it. Bayu, with his high ego, replied that they were natural calculations, a form of guessing, and asked the old man to relax because he had not finished yet. Shi, a little disconcerted, asked Bayu to continue. He continued with his knowledge, saying that the brush holder was from the study room of Emperor Jianqing of the Qing Dynasty and that they were from the time of the Republic of China. The bronze jar was from the Song Dynasty, produced during spring and autumn. The white porcelain and the ocean oven were also from the Yuan Dynasty. After describing all the antiquities in the room, the old man was completely confused. Bayu then asked if the old man still doubted his skills. He replied that he could not believe it if he had not seen it with his own eyes. Bayu feels satisfied and claims that the sword had been used by Liu Ba, and asks if the old man believes it now. Mr. She admires Bayu's smart calculations, saying that the elders did various investigations to determine the origin of the items. However, he was afraid to say that the sword was used by Liu Ba. Based only on Bayu's word, it was a bit mysterious to be tested. The protagonist is confused and thinks if the old man still does not believe him, but the system says that the old man believes 100%. He wonders why, now that the old man believes, he still wants to oppose. Our boy considers that Mr. She has something to say or something that needs his help, and the system indicates that there is a 100% chance. Bayu continues to think that the old man is impressive, because he has just been surpassed by the protagonist's talent and is now trying to use tricks. Our boy recognizes that the old man is really a prominent elder in the circle of antiquities. Observing Mr. Bayu wonders if the problem is related to antiquities, and the system confirms with a 100%. The protagonist realizes that Mr. Shi wants to discover something about the authenticity of a piece. The protagonist asks Mr. Shi if there is something that he wants Bayu to identify. Surprised, the old man asks how he knew that, but admits that he is recently upset with something related to an antiquity. He explains that if our boy can help discover the authenticity of the piece, it would be of great help. The protagonist thinks that this is the perfect opportunity. If he can solve the problem, he will be able to seal the friendship with the old man. In a loud voice, Bayu says that he will gladly help and affirms that Mr. Shi's business is like his own business. He is grateful and the two go down a staircase to a basement. The young man comments on the size of the basement. The old man explains that in his business you have to be careful, because some important treasures need to be hidden there. He mentions that he recently received a jar of 9 blue and white dragons, an exceptional quality piece. The protagonist thinks that the old man is really worthy of being a great elder, compared to him and the old Wang, who looked like street beggars. The two enter the vault and Chi mentions that he tried his best, but it doesn't matter how he looked at the jar, it still looked real. The protagonist wonders why the old man has so many doubts. He confesses that he always felt uncertain and thought that something was wrong, so the agreement was not concluded. He asks Mr. Bayu to verify the authenticity of the jar and offers 1.5 million as a fee for the service, regardless of the results. Upon hearing this, Bayu thinks that the old man put the situation in a way that it seemed that he was only interested in the money. But Bayu's ambition is not money now. They arrive in front of a second vault that holds the jar of the 9 dragons. Mr. She presents the object, and our boy is impressed with the size and beauty of the jar. The old man explains that the market value of the jar is 1.3 billion and asks the young man to verify the authenticity. Bayu replies that he will do everything possible to help. The young man examines the jar and waits for an answer from the system. The system says it needs to ask a question to get the correct answer. Then, the protagonist asks the system if the jar is original, and the system replies that it is 100% false. He is left without knowing how to prove that the jar is false. The system shows the location of the falsification evidence, but he will need to break the bottom of the jar with a 4% chance of losing the evidence. The protagonist thinks that, although he knows it is false, the possibility of destroying the jar is dangerous. If he breaks it and is not careful, the 1.3 billion piece could end his life. However, if he does not risk it, the old man will not believe him. He wonders if normal people could identify the jar as false, and the system replies that the possibility is 1.4%. Desperate, the protagonist realizes that it is almost impossible for a normal person to identify the jar. If even Mr. She is having difficulties, other specialists will also have them. He understands that it is very risky. If he breaks the jar carelessly, it will be his ruin. However, if he does not risk it, he will lose the trust of the old man. Mr. She looked at Bayu and asked him if he had discovered anything. Bayu crossed his arms and replied that he could affirm with certainty that the jar was false. The old man, not very convinced, asked if he could prove it. Bayu explained that the evidence was in the bottom of the jar. Both looked at the bottom of the jar, and the old man commented that he had already examined it several times and there seemed to be nothing wrong. Then he asked where the mentioned proof was. Bayu replied that the proof was inside the bottom of the jar. Unbelievable, the old man asked if Bayu wanted to break the jar. Bayu confirmed that, unfortunately, that was the only way to prove that the piece was false. The old man said that since the agreement was not yet closed, the possession of the jar was not in his hands and that he would have to inform Mr. Tang about this, given the importance of the matter. Bayu thought that he was also scared to break the jar, but that he needed to take a risk. Out loud, he said that he would assume responsibility and that they could contact the owner of the jar for a face-to-face confrontation. The old man agreed and said that he would call Mr. Tang. Mr. Zhang arrived with a suspicious expression and asked the old man Shi what the problem was. She explained that there was an emergency related to the jar. Our boy noticed that Mr. Shi withdrew from the situation and left the responsibility to him. Bayu realized that there was no way to escape and spoke confidently saying that Mr. Zhang had the talent to sell false things. Zhang, confused, asked what he was insinuating. The protagonist claimed to know that the jar of the 9 dragons was false. Unbelievable, Zhang replied that several experts had analyzed the jar and said it was real. He asked Bayu, whom he had never heard of, to show the problem. He thought Zhang was sure of the scam and recognized the difficulty in identifying the jar due to the technology used. In a loud voice, he said that they could discover the truth if they broke the jar, even taking risks. Zhang interrupted him and said that he would no longer sell the jar and that Bayu could not break it. He joked that Zhang did not want to sell because he knew it was false. Zhang got angry and asked how he dared to speak like that, and claimed that he would not sell anything false. The protagonist thought that Zhang was a shameless man, since he realized that he was trying to prevent the scam from being discovered. However, he decided that he would not let that happen. Suddenly, Bayu hit the jar, breaking it and spreading pieces everywhere. Everyone was stunned to see that. Desperate, Zhang asked the old man Ji why he had let our boy do that. The old man asked for calm and said that if he did not show evidence, he would have to give an explanation and pay for everything. Bayu panicked because he knew that now there was no turning back and he needed to find the fault. However, Yi warned that if the protagonist showed that there was something wrong with the jar, he would have a serious conversation with Zhang. Bayu thought that the old man was dangerous and that he could not miss that opportunity. He asked where the fault was and the system warned that it was close. Paying attention, he asked the system if he would destroy the fault with the blow he was about to give. The system warned that, with the force he was using, he had a 58% chance of breaking the fault. Bayu interrupted the blow, realizing the risk, and thought he almost missed the opportunity. He decided to try it with less force. The system indicated that the probability of destruction would be 13%. Bayu calmed down and understood that he needed to excavate the area little by little. Quickly, he began to despair when he realized that the elders would not believe him if it took a long time. Zhang began to laugh and said to Ji that, although everyone said that the jar was real, Bayu insisted that it was not. Zhang said that, out of friendship, he allowed the protagonist to break the jar, but now he asked where the evidence was and mentioned that he had several offers from many companies. The old man interrupted him and said that he should not worry, because if that were the case, he would pay the money. Bayu is sweating, thinking about what to do if he does not find the fault, hoping that it will appear soon. He gives a small blow that breaks everything, panicking, thinking that the evidence was destroyed. However, he points to a QR code and asks what that is. Mr. Ji gets angry and demands an explanation from Zhang. Zhang falls to the ground, incredulous, but he is already being dragged by Mr. He's henchman. Bu thinks that at least he survived, but then remembers Wang's sword that also had a QR code. He begins to suspect that the sword and the jar came from the same place. Mr. Yi thanks the protagonist, saying that he has done an excellent job and that he is very grateful. He humbly replies that he just wanted to help a friend with a problem, and that it is the responsibility of every man to end the lie and bring the truth, swearing that no one can be deceived. Mr. D takes something out of his pocket and gives it to Bu, saying that it is his business card. He tells him that in the future, whenever he needs it, he can call him to ask for help, and that from now on, they are like a family. Our boy replies that it is an honor to be able to help and that he is at your service, thanking Mr. Yi. In his thoughts, Bu rejoices, realizing that now he has a fat fish to support him. He counts his achievements, 50 million for the double sword and 10 million for the guessing service, in addition to the friendship of the old man Ji and having broken a jar of 1,300 million. He decides that his next step is to help Wang. The next day, Bu is in the car thinking about the fat Wang. He decides that he will divide 10 million from the sale of the double sword with him and wants to see if Wang still rejects him. When turning the corner, Bu sees the old Wang being taken by some men. Bu thinks they are kidnapping the fat man, with the system indicating a 75% chance of being a kidnapping. Without time to think, he decides to follow the kidnappers because the security of his future brother cannot be ignored. The kidnappers accelerate and are already in another part of the city. Bu wonders what this group will do with the fat Wang, and the system says that there's only a 12% chance that they will ask for rescue. He decides to call the police, but realizes that his phone has no signal. Then he asks the system about the possibility that the signal is being blocked, informing that there is a 95% chance. The protagonist wonders how they are blocking the signal, and the system says that it has a 37% chance of rescuing the fat man. He decides that it is enough and that no one will stop him. Our boy begins to ask the system several questions to know the time of everything. The system explains that after 8 seconds, the guard will pass through the door and then turn right. Bu seems to have a map that the system made of the place for him. The system continues to explain that after turning right, at 30 meters the guard will come out in 8 seconds, where there will be a window to jump. The guards talk about why the boss captured the fat Wang, speculating that the 7-star sword was from his production and that he came to investigate, so they needed to teach him a lesson. They hit the fat man and put a sock in his mouth. The window opens and Bu appears taking the sock out of Wang's mouth. Wang, without understanding anything, asks how he knew he was there and if he followed him or if he was part of the kidnappers. Bu slaps him on the head and says that he is there to save him, asking who kidnapped him. The fat man replies that he does not know, because he was caught by surprise, hit and then tied there. Our boy thinks it does not matter since later he will discover with the system, because the important thing is to get out of there. He asks Wang to get up, but he replies that he cannot because he is a wounded fat man and cannot move. He suggests that Bu run away and be safe, saying that he is already very grateful for the help with the 7-star sword. The protagonist thinks it was very difficult to get there to save Wang. He has an idea, and asks the fat man if he remembers the last time he said he was like a younger brother. Wang says he remembers and replies that he can only be someone's brother in the next life. Bu shows a check of 60 million and the fat man gets up quickly, asking where he got all that. Bu tells him to stop asking, because they need to get out of there. Our boy offers 10 million if they both manage to escape, and he accepts it when he hears the amount. Outside, the kidnappers talk about how the boss said that the fat man did not know anything, and that is why he let them take care of it. But now they will have to dig a big hole to bury him. Wang, hearing the conversation, asks what they will do now, fearing that they will bury him. The protagonist tells him not to worry, because he came to save him, but he is also scared. The kidnappers arrive at the door. Seeing that the fat man is no longer there, they panic. Seeing a rope through the window, the kidnappers pretend that he escaped through there and head towards the window. But Bu and Wang hid behind a box and run out. Bu says that luckily he had that idea. The old man replies that it was really a good idea, because he could not have escaped through the window. The kidnappers try to find the two, saying that the old Wang could not have escaped and that he should not be far away. Our boy and Wang run, almost being caught. Asking the system which is the safest way, he replies that it is 72% to the right and 30% to the left. Seeing Bu choosing the roads, the fat man asks if he has been to that place before and if he knows the roads. Our boy replies that no, but Wang insists on asking how he knows where they are going. The protagonist then says that he has the talent for guessing and asks if the fat man does not believe in his skills. Hearing this, Wang is impressed and asks Bu to teach him. The protagonist replies that he will teach him after leaving there. However, there is someone watching the escape through the cameras. A man introduces Bu to another person. The mysterious person replies that he is the one who ruined his business. The man confirms that Bu destroyed the 7-star sword and the 9-dragon vase. The mysterious person, who seems to be from the army, says that although Bu seems like just any guy, the problem is to deal with the old man, questioning what the protagonist and the fat man can do. The man suggests arresting the old man the next day. Hearing this, the guy from the army kicks the man in the stomach, calling him a pig, and says that arresting the old man would end all his plans. He threatens him, saying that if he says that again, he will bleed to death on the ground. The boss concludes that it was the old man who saw through everything and used Bu as a scapegoat to break the vase. He promises to deal with the old man and discuss with his older brother how to handle him. Meanwhile, Bu calculates the escape routes. He realizes that the options are limited and that they are tired, considering taking a shortcut. The system shows routes with escape probabilities varying between 37% and 41%. They head to the door where Wan entered, and the success rate increases as they approach the gate. Bu thinks this is too easy, and suddenly the door closes. Screams warn that the two are standing at the gate. The system warns that the probability of escaping is 3.4%, being the best route of 28%. Bu paralyzes himself, and in the midst of the chaos, a car arrives with several gangsters. He thinks that the system killed him that day, but there is no time for those thoughts, because the only alternative is to fight. After countless blows and a lot of fighting, all those present are on the ground. However, Bu and Wan are still standing. A cigarette falls to the ground and the final boss appears, asking the two of them to approach. Bu approaches and tries to hit him. The boss easily dodges and punches Bu. Wan tries to participate, but receives another blow and falls to the ground. The boss wants more, but Wan has already surrendered, asking him to kill him because he is very tired. Upon hearing this, the army man says that they invaded his base, ruined his businesses, and hit his henchmen, and believe that they are going to die easily. Bu thinks about what he is saying, but decides that it is not the time to think about that. He needs to try to get out of there, asking the system the probability of coming out alive. The system replies that the probability is 33% and thinks it is not so bad. Wan, seeing our concentrated boy, thinks he is planning the escape and decides to buy time. Getting up, Wan tells the boss that he wants to play, but immediately receives a kick in the stomach and a punch in the jaw. Surprisingly, Wan is still standing. The protagonist thinks that the fat man is not used to fight, but to receive blows, and wonders if he is the key to escape. The system confirms that the old Wan is the key to escape with 100% certainty. Desperate, Bu says he does not know how, but needs Wan to use his power now because it is a matter of life or death. The fat man becomes outraged and says that just because he is fat, Bu thinks he is Kung Fu Panda, but since he is like that, there is no other option. Launching at the boss's legs, Wan says he will ask his wife to send money and asks how much he wants. Seeing this, everyone feels ashamed, but Wan takes advantage of the situation and knocks the boss to the ground. The boss realizes that he was deceived by the fat man and gets angry. He kicks Wan, who falls to the ground and begins to hit him mercilessly. Bu sees this and feels sorry for Wan, remembering that when people lose control, they can become stronger for a short period of time. He asks the system if Wan also has this ability, and the system reports a probability of 78%. The boss, lighting a cigarette, says he is tired of hitting both of them and orders the henchmen to finish the job. The henchmen assure the boss that he does not need to worry, and head of the Apata asks Bu if he has final words. Bu looks at Wan and says he has something he has been hiding, that the double sword was actually authentic. Wan, who was down, gets up instantly. Bu continues to say that he sold the sword for 60 million Ries, and that the money he showed him came from that sale. He reveals that he told the old man that Wan's articles were false and that the old man will make him disappear from that place. In addition, Bu remembers Wan the 7-star sword and claims that it belonged to him and that his friends were cheating on him. The fat man, spitting out rage, says he is going to kill Bu. Suddenly, Wan knocks down 3 enemies and goes to Bu. Punching his belly, he throws him against a gate, making him fall. After that peak of energy, the fat man faints. Our boy, with a metal plate on his shirt to cushion the impact of the punch, comments that he would have died in Wan's hands if it weren't for that. He puts Wan in the car, commenting that he is really heavy. However, the protagonist knows that first he needs to discover who those people are. The army man on the ground says that they will still meet again. In the hospital, the old Wan is all bandaged, complaining that he almost lost his life in that escape. Bu replies that if it weren't for the escape, both would have died. Wan asks about what Bu said and wants to know what is true and what is a lie. Bu replies that, except for the double sword, everything was a lie. He guarantees that he will not break the promise that half of the money for the sale of the sword is from Wan. Our boy promises that he will never betray Wan again in the future and that he will be his commercial partner. He starts crying, calling him a liar, but Bu asks him to believe him and assures him that he will not lie to him again. The conversation is interrupted when Wan remembers that Bu promised to teach him magic. He replies that with the qualifications of the fat man it will be difficult. Wan insists that he does not care about the difficulty and remembers that Bu now has to take responsibility for him, suggesting that he should receive a gift for this meeting. Our boy thinks that Wan only has his mind on the money, but the fat man raises his arm saying that the circle of antiquities will be his, and then he feels a pain in his arm. The protagonist gets up and asks if the fat man really does not know who was responsible for the kidnapping. He replies that no, stating that if he knew, he would have done something to settle accounts. The fat man explains that the only different thing he did was investigate the falsification of the 7-star sword, questioning whether that could be related. Our boy thinks in the dragon vase, being involved with the same group, and the system confirms it with 100% certainty. He reflects on the level of fraud of the group, realizing that he has been involved with 2 articles related to them. Then he asks the system what is the probability of being the target of this group, and the system responds 100%. Baiyu realizes that Wan was kidnapped because of him, with the system informing a probability of 60% of that theory. Concluding that it was partially because he indicated that the 7-star sword will be false, he understands that with his current strength it will be difficult to deal with the group, deciding that he needs to hide. Wen apologizes for involving the protagonist, but he thinks that the fat man does not even know that he was the one who put him in this situation. But our boy promises to protect Wan now that he has recognized him as a brother. Baiyu's cell phone rings and it is Mr. Shi, asking if everything is okay. The protagonist is grateful for the concern and thinks that Shi called personally, suspecting that it has something to do with the Circle of Antiquities. Shi warns him that he will be out of town for a few days and recommends that Baiyu and Wan be careful, because the gang will not let them go easily. Our boy asks if Chi has more details and he replies that it is not yet clear, but that the group has a considerable history and alerts Baiyu to be attentive. Chi promises to speak more when he returns. The protagonist is grateful for the information, understanding that the enemies are really dangerous. Wen comments that Baiyu speaks calmly with Chi and it seems that they do not need to worry. However, our boy ignores Wen and thinks that if Chi is not doing anything, the situation is more complicated than he imagined. He reflects on how he got involved in this and wishes to have avoided breaking the jar of the 9 dragons. The scene changes to an isolated house, with the army man commenting with someone on the phone about the importance of old Chi and the recent disturbing investigations. He claims that to avoid suspicions, they need to kill Baiyu and Wan. Another head of the lamp on the line replies that they from the old circle will use traditional methods to eliminate the 2, saying that the show is going to start now. A few days later, Wan is masked, fearing that murderers may be hiding there. Baiyu gets angry and asks if the fat man is stupid, reminding him that no murderer would work in broad daylight. Still scared, he suggests that both should hide until the old Chi returns. The protagonist, however, thinks that waiting for death does not solve the problem and that they need to take the initiative. Wan asks our boy if he is crazy for wanting to face all of them again, remembering how cruel those people were and how they had to flee. Baiyu questions him, wanting to know if he prefers to continue hiding like a mouse and reminding the motivated guy he met, claiming that the priority is to gather information to take the initiative. He reminds Wan of his ambition to dominate the old circle, saying that getting rid of the enemies is halfway through. Wan gets motivated and takes off his disguise, deciding that he will not be afraid. The protagonist asks if he has a plan to get information. He replies to meet a guy in the north of the city who is well informed whenever he is bribed. Baiyu consults the system, asking if going there would help to investigate the fraud gang. The system confirms that going there is useful, but that the specific informant will not help with the information about the gang, but there will be a better specialist there. Suddenly they meet at a night fair of antiquities. Our boy is impressed with the place and asks how Wan can see the products at night. He explains that the fair starts at night and ends at dawn, suggesting to show Baiyu a place. Behind a wall, a suspicious figure watches the 2 and talks on the phone, saying that they arrived at the night fair and that he has fixed everything according to the instructions. The interlocutor promises a reward if the mission is successful. Back at the fair, the suspect talks to himself about the reward of 100,000 for spreading rumors to damage Wan's image, saying that he should not blame him for what he did. However, there is another mysterious man who watches his exit from the alley. Meanwhile, the fat man jokes in front of the protagonist about his reputation at the fair and claims that everyone knows him and that he has done business with many there. However, when greeting 2 people, he is ignored with an expression of disdain that confuses him. Baiyu makes fun of the situation, sarcastically commenting on Wan's good reputation. He tries to explain himself, saying that he confused the people and that the stores he frequented were there, suggesting that they go there. The man on the cell phone who is smoking does not even look at Wan and tells him to choose whatever he wants. He is nice and calls him Brother Su, asking if there are good things available. The man, seeing that he is the fat man, responds coldly, saying that everything is reserved and that he can go anywhere. The fat man gets irritated and asks if Su is under the effect of drugs, since there is no one to treat him like that. Su responds aggressively, telling Wan not to bother and affirming that he will not sell him in any way. The 2 look at each other for a moment, but Baiyu notices that something is wrong. He tells Wan to look around and notice that everyone is watching them. Quickly, the protagonist realizes that they set him up. Heading to an alley, the merchants begin to beat them up, saying that they are not welcome. Wan, confused, comments that he has always been well treated there and does not understand the hostility. Our boy orders him to stay quiet and follow him. 10 minutes later, the 2 return disguised and Wan complains, saying that he was always polite and well received, but now everyone has become his enemies. Baiyu tells him to shut up, that they will soon discover the reason. They approach 2 merchants talking. One of them says that Wan is working for the old Chi, who wanted to buy the vase, but since he had no money, He sent Wan to destroy it and say that it was fake. The other mentions that Bu is an accomplice and that the owner of the 9 dragons vase was thrown into the dam. The first merchant wonders why no one calls the police, and the other replies that the old Chi is a fat fish in the circle of antiquities and no one messes with him. He mentions that he saw Wan and Bu walking around the fair recently. An old merchant questions the veracity of the rumors, but the first insists that where there is smoke, there is fire and that everyone believes it. The old Wan gets angry and is about to say something, but Bu covers his mouth and the two hide in an alley. The protagonist thinks that the rumors may have been spread by the group of swindlers and the system confirms a connection with a 67% probability. Wan, once more irritated, wants to know who spread the lies, but our boy explains that the rumors are aimed at the old Chi, but since he is a fat fish in the circle of antiquities, it does not matter to him, so the rumors end up affecting them immeasurably. The fat man worries and comments that the situation is not going to end well and Bu agrees that it is an evil plan, but fortunately they discovered it in time. Wan asks how they are going to find who spread the rumors and Bu replies that they do not need to look, because a noble man will appear at the night fair to help them. Surprised, the fat man asks about the appearance of that man and Bu says that he does not know, but the most important task is to find him. Suddenly, the old Wan disappears, but soon Bu sees him negotiating with the merchant. The merchant praises Wan for his good eye, showing a Deneskini organ box saying that it is mysterious and full of secrets, but that it cannot be opened. So he offers the box for 30,000 and Wan tries to negotiate saying that he will pay 3,000. The merchant, reluctant, asks Wan to increase the offer saying that he is going through difficulties. Our boy asks the system what is the probability that the article is genuine, and the system confirms with a 100% probability. Bu thinks Wan is cunning, but decides to let him negotiate. The fat man increases the offer to 5,000 and the merchant, still reluctant, accepts. Wan is satisfied, and comments that he will make good use of the box while the merchant, resigned, admits that he will only gain a little with the sale. The guy wants good luck if the fat man is going to sell. However, when he is about to respond, a mysterious hand is placed on the box. It belongs to a man with a terrifying appearance, saying that the two are not reliable.